Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Melissa and I'm the owner of SeasonServeBlog.com. So we're outside in the garden, as you can see, and I have all of my beautiful tomato plants behind me. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through my entire process of how I maintain my tomatoes, from trimming them up to staking them and for fertilizing them. So if you want to learn my tips and tricks for maintaining your tomato plants, just keep on watching. Before we get deeply into this video, I want to let you know that this is only tips and tricks for maintaining indeterminate tomatoes. And there are two types of tomatoes. We have indeterminate tomatoes and determinate tomatoes. And indeterminate tomatoes is basically what I grow here, what's behind me. And these are tomato plants that can vine and grow basically forever. They will keep growing no matter what. Now, determinate tomatoes, on the other hand, they're normally on the smaller side. They're normally dwarf varieties, and they grow to a certain extent, and then they produce tomatoes and then die out. So you don't want to trim your determinate tomatoes at all. This is just for indeterminate tomatoes. So overall, the number one reason why we want to maintain our tomato plants is to ensure that we get lots of delicious tomatoes throughout the growing season. Now, if you let your tomato plants just bush out and grow however they want, they'll send too much energy out to the leaves, out to suckers, and you'll get less tomatoes, unfortunately. So you do have to be a little bit up on the maintenance for the tomato plants in order to get a really good yield. The second reason for maintaining your tomatoes is to control the overall size of the tomatoes. As I said, if they get really big and bushy, it is going to take over your garden and it might encroach on other plants that you have growing next to them. And even if you get your tomato plants to be super big and bushy, it's not really good overall for the tomato plant to be super heavy and super weighed down. So you want the plant to be able to hold itself up and to hold all of the tomatoes that is growing on it. And the third biggest reason for maintaining your tomato plants is to ensure that you get really good air circulation around the plant, and this will help cut down on the amount of pests and diseases that your tomato plant will likely face. Again, if you let your tomato plant grow super big and bushy, air can't circulate throughout all the leaves and stems, and it is more susceptible to trap humidity, trap diseases and funguses, and it'll affect the overall health of your tomato plant. So you want to make sure it's nice and clear and breezy and good for the tomatoes to grow. So before you actually trim your tomatoes, it's a really good idea to look at the weather forecast for the next couple days, because when you cut your tomato plants back, you will create lots of open lesions on your tomato plants where you cut off different branches, cut off the suckers, things like that. And if it's going to rain in the next couple days, it might rot out your tomato plant, and we want to completely avoid that. So make sure that the forecast for the next 2 to 3 days is going to be sunny and dry. And additionally, if you are able to swing this, it is better to trim your tomato plants in the morning just so it has all day to sort of dry out and heal over. However, I am doing this in the evening time. It's not the best, you know, we could do better, but this is all the time I have to do this chore. So we're going to do it in the evening, and luckily it is not going to be that cold tonight. So I think the tomato plants should be totally fine, especially with the heat that's on the way. So in terms of tools that you'll need to maintain your tomato plants, you don't need very much. All you need is a pair of gardening gloves, a pair of shears. Hopefully yours are not rusted like mine. These are my Felco 2s, and they have rusted so bad. I have to work on maintaining these. So we'll do that in another video, but for now, these will do for sure. And then you just need a bucket to collect all of the leaves that you'll be cutting off your tomato plant. So that's all you need. So those are basically the only 3 things we'll need for maintaining the tomato plants. And once you grab those, you're basically good to go. So let's go and maintain our tomato plants. Okay, so I'm going to show you this demo on my beautiful San Marzano tomato. She is looking really big and bushy, and we got to tidy this up a bit. So the first thing that I do when trimming up my tomato plants is to trim any foliage that is on the bottom of the plant. And you want to do this because you don't want your leaves of your tomato plants touching the soil, because that'll encourage bacteria and funguses to grow up your tomato plant and it'll get infected. So make sure that none of your tomato foliage is touching the soil in your garden. Additionally, throughout the season, as your tomato plant grows, the bottom leaves will just die off naturally, and this is because they're old and they're not getting normally as much direct sunlight as they used to when there was less foliage happening. So you want to remove all that because the foliage is dead or dying, and you don't want that to be on your tomato plants. Additionally, when I remove all of these lower leaves, I want to actually take them up at least a foot off the ground. This will definitely encourage no bacteria or funguses to be able to touch the plant, and just as it grows over the season, you just want to keep trimming that up and up and up as your plant grows taller and taller. So let's do that together. I'm going to get on my gloves and get my snippers ready. refocus the camera, and then I'll show you how I trim the bottom part of my plant. So this is one of the bottom leaves. We're going to take this off. So I'm going to come in with my embarrassingly rusty Felcos and take that off right there. I'm going to pop that in my bucket, and I'm going to work my way all around the plant, making sure that the bottom leaves are taken off. So now that we have all the bottom leaves taken off of our plant and it's looking really nice and airy down there, we are going to look for suckers on the tomato plant. And basically what a sucker is a growth point in your plant that you do not want to keep, because it pulls energy away from the actual plant and it reduces your likelihood of getting a good yield of tomatoes. So basically what a sucker is, it's a little growth point that grows between the stem of the tomato plant and a leaf of the tomato plant, and it just kind of grows up and out. It looks like it's trying to grow a new tomato plant. So we don't want to keep any of those, so we want to go ahead and get rid of all of them. So let me find some suckers on this plant. I'm sure that I can already see a bunch. So let me show you what that looks like and how we take care of that. Okay, so this is a very good example of a sucker on the tomato plant. This is a sucker. So here is a leaf. We want to be able to keep the leaf just so that the plant will be able to photosynthesize. And this is actually the main stem of the plant. So it starts down here, it comes up and goes up that way. So this tomato plant is a little bit wonky, but it's going to be okay. So you want to get in there with your scissors and make a straight cut if you can to remove the sucker. So there's one of them gone, and we'll go in and remove the other one. I'm actually going to cut it from over here. So we're going to go in with the scissors and trim that off. And you want to make sure that you get a pretty straight cut. If you cut it too diagonally, it's going to open up more of the plant and can possibly lead to infection. So do a straight cut across if you're able to. So basically after this, I'm going to look for all the other suckers on the plant and take those off. As I was going through and trimming the suckers, I also went ahead and trimmed out some of the leaves, especially ones that overlapped each other. Don't go too crazy removing the leaves, just make sure that you remove ones that overlap or ones that are looking like they are wilting or dying. Near the top of the plant, the suckers are likely going to be a bit smaller and they might be too small to remove with your trimmers. You can grab a small pair of scissors to remove these, or what I like to do is to actually just pinch them off using my nails. Okay, and this is what the tomato plant looks like after it's been all trimmed up, and it looks so much better. So as you can see, there's lots of area for the sun to get through to the leaves so that they can grow. Also, there's lots of air circulation that's able to happen because it's less densely packed with leaves, and all of the suckers are gone. So this tomato plant is well on its way to producing some beautiful tomatoes. So now that all of our lovely tomato plants are trimmed up, we are going to stake them because they are getting fairly big. And typically I use these 6-foot cedar stakes to stake up at least my San Marizanos, because the San Marizanos can grow really, really tall. They can definitely grow over 6 feet. So at minimum, I like to use a 6-foot cedar stake. You don't have to use cedar. You can definitely use metal ones, or the metal ones that have the rubber on the outside. I really want to get some of those because cedar ones do get warped, although they are very durable. So super simple. All we need is our 6-foot stakes. And I also have this really nice foam wire tie. This has wire inside and it's wrapped in foam. And I really like it because when you wrap it around your tomato plant, it doesn't cause any lesions or tears in the plant. It just kind of keeps it nice and cushioned and doesn't cause any rubbing or anything like that. So very good stuff and really cheap at garden centers and places like hardware stores and stuff like that. So yeah, we're gonna use that, and I'll show you how I stake up my tomato plants. So I'm gonna start staking up this tomato plant here, and it already has a little stake in there. I'm gonna actually keep that. I'm just gonna take off the old wire tie that I have on here because this should be enough to support it now. So I'm gonna take my stick, and then I'm gonna place it through the tomato cage. I still like using tomato cages, even though people say like they're not that great, but I still use them. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna place it away at least maybe 6 or 7 inches away from the base of the tomato plant, just so it's not hitting any major roots. So I thread it through the tomato cage, and then I push it into the ground. And then all I do at this point is just take the tomato plant, find a good spot to tie it up, and then I just wrap the wire tie around it just like this. So this will provide a lot of structural support to the plant, and it'll allow it to keep on growing up nice and tall. And finally, I want to share how I fertilize my tomato plants with you. And for me, what I like to do is every 2 weeks, I come in with a liquid fertilizer and I water it around the base of the plant. And I use a liquid organic fertilizer that's in a concentrate. So all I have to do is mix a little bit of the concentrate with some water and then water it in around my plant. And every 2 weeks is a really good schedule, I find, for this, because you're giving your plant a constant source of nutrients and it enables it to grow really, really well. But if you want to give your tomato plants an extra boost during the season, I like to add some manure to my tomato plants. And this year I'm using cow manure for this because that is what the store had on sale. So we bought a bunch of these, and you can use whatever compost or manure that you like. You can use fish, sheep, chicken, mushroom, anything you want basically. But make sure that it is a well composted manure. You don't want a manure that's fresh, because if it's like that, it can actually burn your plants. It'll burn the stems, the leaves, the roots, all that. So make sure that you get something that's really well broken down. There's no odor. It basically just feels like dirt from the ground. That is the way to go. And with the manure, I like to sprinkle it around the plant so that it's about 1 inch thick, and then I go ahead and kind of work it in with my hands into the soil. And I swear, once you add this in, your plants will explode. So that is what we want to produce some amazing tomatoes. And that is it for today. I hope that you really enjoyed this video on how to trim and maintain your tomato plants. And if you have any really good things that you like to do when growing your tomato plants, leave them down in the comments below. I am super interested to see what people do in order to grow the best tomato plants possible. So if you enjoyed today's video, please make sure that you hit the like button down below, as well as the red subscribe button, to see how my beautiful tomato plants grow throughout the season. Also, make sure you follow me on Instagram to get some behind the scenes on what my garden is looking like before it gets live here on YouTube. And also make sure to follow my food blog for lots of garden updates, as well as amazing seasonal recipes that you can make with ingredients from your garden. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!